Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger, my friends. The big 2XKO launch patch is now live. It's now playable on console. It's out of early access on PC. 2XKO is basically out now, and with it being out, we have the patch, and there's a lot of things to cover. Not the least of which, well, there's a lot of general goodies. There's a lot of character specifics, and if I did this right, there'll be timestamps for everything, and give a like for timestamps. Thank you very much. There's a lot of just general things. There's a lot of bug fixes that don't necessarily bear going into a lot of detail, or just a lot of like extra small changes, and other things like, hey, you can go into a ranked lobby and go into training mode and go and queue up for ranked matches while you train. That's great. There's new expert combo trials. There's all sorts of cosmetic goodies for you in the store if you want to purchase them. And there's a bunch of universal changes. So I want to cover the universal changes before we get into the character specific stuff, because some of the universal changes are a fairly big deal. Specifically, I want to cover jab changes, projectile changes, dash changes, assist changes, and also how Juggernaut has changed. And then we'll get the character stuff. So let's start with that, and let's start with jabs. It's pretty basic, but it's important. So the jab change. This only affects some characters, but it's a big deal. So various characters in the game, their standing jab has, various speeds to it. Like Ahri has a 6-framer, Jinx has a 7-framer, and some of the bigger characters, they had 8-framers, and that was simply too slow to compete realistically. So for a bunch of the bigger or slower characters now, their standing jabs have gone from 8 frames to 7 frame startup. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but for being able to just press buttons and contest back against the enemy and hopefully get combos or whatever, it's a pretty sizable change. So the characters that are affected by this are, the standard big boys. So people like Braum, also people like Illaoi, Darius, and also Blitzcrank. Now keep in mind, it's only for the standing light. Things like crouching lights can still have variable timings depending on the character. It could be 8 frames, could be 9 frames. But for people who are just bigger and slower, the ability to just mash stand light and hopefully get out of pressure, for them, it's all going to be just a frame faster across the board. So they have a more realistic chance to get out versus the faster, more pressure-heavy characters. So it's not a big, sexy change, but it makes some of the lesser played characters a lot more viable. Now, another very important change for just how the rules of the game work in general is for projectiles. And basically, if someone gets hit, whatever projectile they do for the most part will go away. So classic example is assist toss out projectile and you run forward and try to pressure and whatever. And under the old rules, if you had tried to bop them while they're running at you, you'd get hit by the projectile. So now how it works is this. If you hit them while the projectile from the assist is on screen, the projectile will now go away. Pretty cut and dry. So situations where you can kind of be checkmated or just pressured heavily, now you won't be. Now, keep in mind, this is only while the projectile is on the screen. If you hit the enemy, say, before the projectile comes out, then you still get hit. So you have to wait for it to be on screen. So don't hit them too early if that's an option. Another option, say we're dealing with like Time Winder, right? And whoops, landed on it. If I can somehow hit Ekko before I land on it, it'll go away. So this is for point characters and assist characters. Whoever has a projectile out, if they get hit, for the most part, their projectile will go away. The rules also apply on top of just hitting the enemy. Say if they're trying to throw you. Because a lot of situations, the projectile's on the screen, I'll block, you get thrown instead, right? So now, if you tech the throw, you'll also just kind of delete the projectile just the same as if you hit the enemy. So just keep in mind. A few exceptions to this rule you're seeing on the screen right now. So certain ultimates are like, edge case moves. That won't be affected, but otherwise this change is pretty universal. Another change is backdash and forward dash changes for the cast. So basically the characters that were much better at abusing backdashes, like say Yasuo for one, and it's still not slow, but slower. So Yasuo, Vi, Warwick, Ekko, and Ahri basically backdash not as good as they used to. Either just smashing backdash or just kind of wave dashing backwards. It's a little bit slower. They readjusted how the movement works. So while you can still just chain backdashes, it won't be as fast overall. And just forward dashing and chain dashing for the big characters, specifically Blitzcrank and Braum, is just a little better than what it used to be because, they're still slow, but they're just a little bit quicker. So The big guys are a little bit quicker and the speedsters are a little bit slower. Another pretty massive change to this general rule set of the game is how assists work. And now you are much more incentivized to punish the opponent's assist. So normally how it works is the opponent will call their assist does their thing, taunt, peace out, and they're out for a few seconds, and then it regenerates, and then at which point you can do it all over again. And say if you have double assist, you can do the same thing, just call them twice, and then they leave, but they're out for just a little bit longer because double assist is stronger, right? But now how it works is if you manage to hit the opponent's assist at all, instead of the usual timer, it's going to be a 4-second timer. They're out of lock for a lot longer than usual because you specifically hit them out. So they cannot call them back as quick as they used to. Calling assist is very powerful in the game, and by design, it's a tag-based fighter, right? You want to call assist. But basically before, if you caught the assist doing whatever, the only reward is the actual hit. You didn't stop them in any real way because the countdown clock was the same as it's ever going to be. So now they're going to be out for twice as long, effectively locked out for twice as long. So if you manage to tap the assist in any way, even if it's the lightest tap, as long as you get them at all, you'll lock them out of their assists for 4 full seconds now, which in this game could be an eternity. So it's not as big as like all new moves, all new characters, whatever, but it's one of those changes where it does affect the game flow. Another universal change is to one of the fuses. That's the Juggernaut fuse. That's where you are just the one character, that's it. Although you have some interesting things like snapbacks instead. So what's changed here? One, you just have more health. So you already had more health as it is to be Juggernaut. Now you just get more. So you used to have 120% base health. Now you have 130%. So you gain a little bit more health. Also, so every time you hit the enemy, you'll get more break gauge or more fury gauge, right? So they've effectively doubled how much you get per hit. So by the metrics here, it used to be 0.01 per unblocked hit. It is now 0.02, which doesn't sound like a lot in the grand scheme of things, but basically you get where you're going a lot faster. Also, speaking of the break gauge, you gain a lot more break gauge on a snapback. So that's just the down tag. Normally on down tag, you would tag in your partner. You don't have a partner, it's just you. So instead, you just get a giant chunk of the break gauge instead. So there's already a good incentive to do this anyways, and now a lot more yet. Also, another benefit of the snapback is you would gain some of your gray health. Now that gray health that's recovered is doubled compared to what it used to be before. So just basically a lot more advantages of snapping back to the opponent in that you get more health back and you get a lot more break gauge. So the thing that makes the fuse unique is now just way better across the board on top of just more advantages like more health and all that kind of stuff. So now that said, let's get into some of the character specific changes. Now, let's talk character specifics, and let's start with Ahri. So Ahri and some of the better characters in the game, they definitely got some nerfs, although not in a way that really ruins them in any way, but just making them a bit more fair than they were. And the big nerf for Ahri out of the gate has to do with her projectiles. So one of the big things is before this nerf, she's the one character with like a traditional versus game air dash. Air dashes are rarer in this game. Although newcomer Caitlyn sort of has one, so there is that. But still, this is an air dash with no caveats, right? And if she hit you with her aerial projectile, it would refresh her aerial dash. So hopefully I'm showing you some of the older game footage here. So she could air dash, toss a projectile, it would connect, it would refresh her dash, and then she could dash again. And that doesn't work that way no more. So now if you dash, land a projectile, that's it. You still have an air action. Like you can still do something else, but you cannot dash again. Now that said, if you haven't dashed yet, you can land the projectile and still dash after the projectile. So most combo structures shouldn't really be affected by this in any real way, but it's just her neutral, her runaway, it just will help curtail that a little bit. Also, when it comes to just nerfs, her hurt boxes are also changed up a little bit just to make it a little bit easier for her to get hit. And we talked about the general changes earlier. So her projectile assist is also now subject to the projectile assist changes. So if you manage to hit the point character while she's doing the assist, those projectiles will go away. And there's some other, small changes, but just to mention here, like she's one of the characters where her backdash speed is slightly nerfed. Her stand M is slightly nerfed in range. So it does not quite as far as it used to, although don't worry, stand heavy still hits from very far away. Her down S2 bounce the overhead, now considered airborne on frame 10. What does that really mean? Well, basically, if you hit her out of it at the beginning, she would just be considered like airborne and she'd be in a juggle state right away, which basically gave you worse punishes for her getting hit by it. So now, you'll hit her grounded on the ground and get whatever normal combo you would up until frame 10. And besides that, it's all just basically quality of life stuff. So Ahri toned down a smidge, but make no mistake, just like some of the other characters we're going to talk about later, definitely among the better characters in the game, and definitely a very worthwhile character to pick because she is magic and can do basically everything you want out of a character in this game. Now, Blitz. So Ahri was a character who got a slap on the wrist. Blitz got some fun changes because, well, to be frank, he needed them. So one we mentioned earlier, but just to talk about it, he's one of the characters where his stand light is now 7 frames instead of 8. This does not seem like a big deal, but he doesn't really have too much in the way of defense, so this lets him mash out a pressure that was more difficult for him before. Also, in just quality of life hurt boxes, you know, the part where you get hit. So a lot of the moves where he's like punching at you, the hurt box on his hands have either been like reduced or removed, so it's less likely that he'll just get tapped on like his knuckles and get hit out of his move. And for jumping medium and jumping heavy, specifically, the hurt box around his feet have been either removed or just reduced, so he's less likely to get tapped on his toe, and then he kind of loses his move, right? So it's basically more difficult to hit Blitz while he's trying to hit you. And when it comes to just buffing moves, first hit of down medium, so the part where it hits lower, right? So it says the hitbox is slightly taller, so just basically a little easier to hit, probably help with some juggle combos. And just on the note of juggle combos, the first hit here also has more hit stun, increased by 3 frames. So if you're just catching people, especially in juggles, it just makes everything more reliable to combo and hit. So that's good. Now, so buffs to his normals in general. We talked about how his, like, you know, various normals and all that, you know, it's harder for him to get hit, right? Well, it's now easier for him to hit you as well. So stand medium now has a bigger hitbox, so just slightly further out, and stand heavy now travels further than it used to. So rather, it would hit from a little bit further away than it could hit before. So it's now just better in neutral, which is great. Other great quality of life, run heavy. So it kind of just slams you with his butt, right? That now actually crushes lows. So say someone has a lower hitbox move, right? If you know it's coming, you can literally just jump right over that stuff and butt stomp them on the way down. So that's some proper doskoi right there. Now, another move that's improved is back heavy. So this is kind of like a sort of anti-air that he has. Like naturally down heavy is still a universal anti-air, but this had a different angle specifically. So now the hitbox itself is better. It hits a little further behind him. Good. If you catch someone in the air, the hit stun is increased by 5 frames. So now they're in that hit animation 5 frames longer, which will hopefully give you more time to convert. If you hit them on the ground, it's now increased by 2 frames. So basically, anytime you hit, you'll have just a little bit more time to get whatever you're going. Also, specifically, to help with that, if you hit somebody while they're airborne, they're going to launch a little bit lower just so you can just more easily catch them with whatever you're going to go for. So in their own words, the idea is basically it's going to be a little bit better for the edge case use you'll want to actually use it for. More buffs, down S1, the air grab now has 4 more active frames. So just a little bit more easy to use in all the ways you want to use it. Spinning Turbine, that's a move where he just kind of spins to win here. So it's had his damage increased by 5 points. Not a lot, but you take what you can get. Mid-air command grab now generates more steam than it used to, just to kind of give it a bit more sass compared to down S1. So now if you're looking just to build up your steam, this is the way to go. So these are not gigantic game-changing buffs. That's for Braum. Braum got a lot. But for Blitz, who is another character who's kind of wallowing near the bottom of the tier list, these are all very welcome changes. Now for Braum, in no uncertain terms, Braum is the winner of the patch, like in a very big way. I'm not saying he's the best character in the game or nothing like that. Far from it, right? But when he was debatably, and I would say too, the worst character in the game, he's definitely got a lot to make him a lot more valuable. So one, again, we mentioned universal change, but he's one of the beneficiaries of he's got a 7-frame jab now instead of an 8-frame jab. This is now his fastest attack, and this just is his fastest attack. That alone, right? That's a pretty big deal. Another change, just like Blitzcrank as a big boy, his general forward movement's just a little bit better than it was before, so that's nice for a big slow character. But let's start with some of the biggest changes. How about the buff? So the freeze buff's one of the biggest deals about him, right? Because it gives him all sorts of unique properties, unique moves, just cool things. And one of the things that sucked before, you know, his S2 super, the damage super, if you used it, it used the buff. And now, it doesn't use the buff anymore. You get to keep your buff and all the cool things that come with it after you use your S2 super. You can still burn on other things later, but the super itself does not consume the buff. And for Braum, that's gigantic. Because, like, you could be in situations where, like, you want the damage, but you don't want to lose the buff. And then you got to do a lot of gymnastics in terms of setups and Oki and, like, whatever. Now, no, just get your damage. You're good to go. That's simple, but it's huge. Another simple but huge buff is his shield. And specifically, his shield as an assist. Because it now is way better. So here's some footage from the older build, right? And he'll do it, shield for like a split second, and he pieces out. Which is not useless, but it was a bit more... You had to work with some particulars, right? Now, he starts mid-screen, he walks forward like he does normally, like when he's like a playable character, he walks forward, right? So he'll walk forward, and he also is on screen for like twice as long as before, making it invaluable compared to how it was previously. Like in my early testing, that's why I liked him with Caitlyn, because, okay, he's a big moving shield, right? So I'll just toss him out, and if he catches something, then you just shoot him with Caitlyn, and it's literally that simple. And, oh, I caught you. I'll tag in the Braum, and then keep comboing too, right? Like, it just gives him a lot of what he wants. The defensive property is really cool, and because Braum is literally moving forward while doing it, that means he's that much closer to the enemy, which means if you get that moment where you get him, then you can just tag in the Braum and start hitting him. Or heaven forfend, just tag and go for command. He's already in, right? That's half the battle with Braum is just getting in, and he's literally getting himself into position while doing it. And if you have 2x assists, you can just keep trudging him across the screen the whole time, right? So I think that's really cool. Time will tell how useful it really is, but it's certainly a dang sight better than it was previously. Other things that are just kind of like quality of life is he'll make sure to switch sides with his down heavy anti-air now. He did not before. So if they're like kind of weirdly above you, he'll try to face the correct side now instead of just whiffing entirely. If you do have your buff down S2, the icicles are just a little bit bigger, just to help people in happy birthday situations where you caught the assist so they don't fall out. When he does charge S2, the big battering ram, right? Part of the deal of that is it destroys projectiles. But there was a little bit of a dead zone sometimes where you could charge and still get hit. That dead zone's removed. So it's now the anti-fireball move. It's always meant to be just kind of across the board without caveats. And on that note, take a note here from some of the older footage of the game and the Poro Toss. The Poro Toss, well, it's kind of like it exists, right? But it definitely ain't winning no fireball wars. And now that's different. The Poro Toss will trade with projectiles. So there you go, right? It's still difficult to aim. It's not exactly going to win you a projectile battle or nothing. But now at least it won't just bounce off the projectile and you get hit on the other end. So Braum, obviously, contesting at range is the difficulty for the character, and by design. But now at least he can kind of sacrifice his little buddy to help eat a projectile hit for him. A lot of his hitboxes and hurt boxes are better. Jump medium, forward heavy, down heavy, all been improved. Forward heavy has a damage buff and now does 70 damage. Used to do 60, so he's just straight up doing more damage than before. And much the same here, the follow-up. The follow-up now does more damage as well, does 5 more damage. On that note here, if you got your buff up here, down S2 also does 5 more damage. His unique sweep, down, forward, and heavy. So the deal is here, the first hit hits from further away than it ever did before. The second hit does not hit as far away, but basically now it's kind of unified. It works from further away, and if the first hit connects, well then the second one should pretty much always connect. It says specifically the overall distance is the same, but if people are using retreating guard, it'll just be that much easier to just tag them on the toes and punish them for it. More buffs. So one of the things he can do, say he catches you with an air throw, right? He can use air S2 to kind of bop you on the ground, but that was only with the buff live. Now that works without the buff. So he can do this and then bop the enemy with air S2, which basically means his air throw is just a lot more scary and you're gonna have to give it a lot more respect because you get a lot of damage. And again, when he does super, he keeps the buff too, right? So like it's just really good all around. More buff, again, more buffs, right? Down S2, the big old smash that gives you the buff, right? So the recovery has been decreased. What does that mean? So if you use this like OTG the enemy, it'll force a stand, right? You have more frame advantage. So it was decreased by 2 frames, so you're more plus. Also, one of its main uses, even if they blocked it, right, it still gave you the buff. So now, if you do that, you recover, you're less negative than you were before. So you're -2, which is not ideal, but then again, you can also just start armoring through things as well. So when you get the buff, you can get a little crazy. And of course, a lot of bug fixes like all the other characters. So Braum, again, he's not going to be the best character. He's not better than Yasuo or Ekko or whatever. But he's definitely, I think, hopefully anyways, a lot more viable with this just giant swath of buffs. Caitlyn just came out. There ain't no changes. Next character. So Darius is another character that's got some pretty respectable changes. Again, like some of the big characters, he now has a 7-frame light, which is just great quality of life for him. Just lets him breathe a lot easier. Another pretty big change here is down S2, the projectile. So this was added way late in development. I think it was at the start of early access for him. He did not have the move before. But yeah, so changes. It's now faster startup by 2 frames. Now has 2 frames better recovery. Now has better hit stun. 3 more frames of hit stun if it connects. It says the launch arc for when it hits the character is slightly adjusted. The hurt box when he does it is less. Like, it's just basically better in every possible respect. At bare minimum, with all the changes to Fireball, it'll just be that much easier to convert off if you get the straight hit. So that's cool. You can even do it faster than you could before after the projectile's gone, right? So you can spam it more if you want. Speaking better all around, one is stand jab just got a slight range buff, which is good. But here's the big one, apprehend. So we all know apprehend. That's the move where he kind of gets you and brings you in. Then he can put you in a little bit of a mix engine, or if it's just combos, whatever. But it's really good. But it had a very distinct weakness, and it takes a second to get going, right? Before he like hits you. And some people, if they're very on the ball, could just parry that on reaction. They see it, then they just hit the parry button, and then Darius gets got. So now it has a new function specifically for the people who are fast enough to always be able to parry it on sight. And you can hold it, which delays the timing and changes everything. So before, oh, he did it. Like, I just see him doing it. I'll hit parry right away, and bingo, bango, bongo. I get whatever I want, right? Now, oh, he's doing it. Better parry. Whoops. I get hit. And if you notice the frame date on that, right? When it hits me, it's plus 15. So if he hits you with this and it's plus 15, you know it's 15 frames? Stand heavy is 15 frames. So yes, the charge version and the held version will just go directly into stand heavy, and of course, whatever combos from there. Also another application, obviously before, if you block it, you're putting like kind of like a low level mix up, right? So if you block this, he's just +3 on block. So like, it's not like, if you can't be passive. Like, you can never be passive anyways, but you still extra can't be passive. Just parrying on reaction is now a little bit of a guessing game, because if you parry on reaction, you're wrong. He does for the charge version, he'll get a full combo on you. But if you block the charge version, he's still plus, and then he can still kind of go for whatever. So basically, this just adds a new tool to the toolbox. So that's a nice buff for Darius. Also, will remain to be seen the full extent, but it can actually help with this combo structure as well because of the delayed timing. Like, say you do the big wall bounce, right? You can do this, do it, hold it most of the way, and then like just keep comboing. So there's potentially new combo routes as well, because it'll pull you back in with the held version. So mess around with it. And to round it all off, round it off, he's like Mr. Well-rounded, right? So apprehend got even more buffs besides just like adding a new version of apprehend. So apprehend, the light follow-up, the headbutt, now does 5 more damage, does 90 damage, used to do 85. If you do medium off of apprehend, right? So it does the bleed, right? It says damage to bleeding opponents, like if they're already bleeding, is now increased. So if they're already bleeding, it now does 10 more damage than it used to before. Cool. Also, if they're already bleeding, apprehend medium will also now gain you more meter than it did before. Cool. If they're already bleeding, it now does more chip damage. Cool. If they're already bleeding, S2 will gain you more meter than it did before. Cool. Although S2 now does slightly less chip damage if they're bleeding. So that's the one nerf. But yeah, overall good quality of life, and just adding in a whole new aspect to the character with the charge apprehend, I think is really cool. Now, Ekko. Ekko is a threat, to say the least. One of the characters that sort of defines this game as far as like competitive so far in its lifespan. And he got some nerfs, we'll talk about it, but he also got some buffs. So let's talk about heal tap. That's down, forward, and light. This is, for lack of a better term, his Shoto low. So some things have been improved about it. So and now it has more hit stun. Specifically has 15 frames of hit stun versus 13 frames. And it also pushes less far back on hit. So ideally, it'll just go into certain situations, certain moves that did not do before. Also, running heavy. That's his unique run attack. Now, if used in a combo, scales less than it did before. Meaning, all your successive hits after the fact will do more damage than they otherwise did. Basically making it more attractive as a combo starter. So you're just going to do more overall damage. So, some small buffs to help take the edge off of the nerfs, because nerfs is what the boy got, and I think you could argue fairly deserved. So one of the big ones is, well, all the nonsense you can do after image, right? Because that's sort of what the character is. So one of the nonsense thing he can no longer do is do after image teleports after he whiffs throw. So you're looking at the older footage now, and before you go for a throw, well, okay, if I whiff my throw, whatever, after image out, I'm not eating a punish, right? I don't want any consequence. Well, now you got a little bit. So how it works now is if you got your clone up and you whiff a throw, you better believe you have to go through the entire throw whiff animation before you're allowed to recall to the clone. So situations, especially like option selects, there's a lot of situations where this is very applicable, where he goes for the throw, and this could be an auto time setup, or it could just be by itself. It doesn't matter. It was too abusable. So now, if you go for the throw and you whiff, you do not automatically just go back to your clone and get to do whatever else you want to do. That's just, you gotta. It's only fair. Now, speaking of only fair, stand medium now has less range than it did before. He should not really be a buttons character considering everything else he has going for him, which is a lot. And even then, still has better range than maybe it deserves to have anyways, right? But it has been curtailed just a little bit. His overhead, down, forward, and medium. So if you hit this as a counter hit, it has less overall hit stun, which means you're only getting a light after the fact. You're not getting anything heavier. So therefore, if it hits as a counter hit, your overall combo damage is going to go down a bit because you're scaling, because you're starting with a light. And also, that means you got to be a little bit closer because you can't hit with a further away button. Also combos, his S1 super, the boomerang super. So basically, it causes damage scaling starting with the first hit. So especially if it's like starting a combo, you're just going to be doing overall less damage. Which again, fair enough. His stray hits won't be, you still get rewarded, but it won't be as rewarding. His level 3 super is now more negative on block. It is now negative 28. It used to be negative 22. So basically, it's going to be just that much easier to line up your very big punishes. Also, if someone happens to air block it, their pushback will now be much less. So they'll be more able to punish it. Also, on Chrono Break, he now just gains less meter. So yeah, like overall, like one of the more annoying aspects of it, especially when it comes to like option selects, has been taken away. But just like Ahri and Yasuo when we get to him, overall, like he's still probably going to remain one of the better characters in the game. Nerfed, yes. Still strong, yes. Because the toolbox is still the toolbox. That wasn't taken away from him. So like some particulars are different now, but he's still Ekko, therefore he's still good. Illaoi's got some changes, although not as much as some of the other characters, because she was always pretty good. Like, maybe not the best or nothing, but Illaoi just always sort of worked. But she is a beneficiary of the light change mentioned before, so she now has a 7-frame light, which is her fastest move, so that's a big blessing, because everything else is slower than that. Her charged down heavy has been changed up, specifically the second hit. Basically, hitbox is just better, so there was situations where the first hit could connect, but the second hit would whiff. And now, basically, if the first hit connects, the second hit will always connect. Down S1, the big tentacle slap here, has changed up. So basically, if it hits as a counter hit, the hit animation is now different on counter hit. So you can get better follow-ups and all that kind of stuff. So more reward for using it, say, as an anti-air. Specific wording is it causes a soft flip on counter hit. So there is that. Other things that have improved, Illaoi's charge heavy. So one of the big deals here, which really sucked for her combos, is the second hit scaled the combo. So there was like almost no reason to do it because you'd actually be doing less damage if you let both hits connect versus like just going like heavy down heavy versus like this into down heavy, right? So now the second hit doesn't cause scaling. So basically, if you use it, you'll actually do more damage in combos. So some of her combo routings might have to be rethought a little bit. Doubly so, because to help shake up some of her combo routing, her mediums, like specifically crouch medium, stand medium, and jump medium, they all now do 5 less damage. So with this being buffed and these being just nerfed a little bit in damage, it might be time to rethink some of your combo routing. But more other good buffs here. Charge forward S2, the big overhead, right? If you hit with the charge version, it now does 20 more damage. Used to do 130, now does 150. So if you just manage to sneak that in, hey, that's great. At bare minimum, it just means being rando this into S1 super just does that much more damage, right? Even the base non-charge version, right? This the regular overhead, that now does 120, used to do 110. So good buff. Also buffed was Illaoi's Just Frame Tentacle. A lot of people don't even know this exists. So forward S1, S1, if you do it with very specific timing, it changes the tentacle hit. So notice now Teemo is crumpling and falls to the ground and gets like a state where I can hit him after the fact. Normally, if I just kind of mash the button as fast as possible, he just kind of, he's standing as normal, right? And that does 178 damage. Versus now the Just Frame does 267 damage if they all connect, plus the crumple state if you want to follow up with that. Now, it always did more damage. Just specifically, the Just Frame Tentacle now does 20 more damage than it did before. It always did more damage if you did the timing. Now it just does more damage. Also, it gains you more meter. So there's more incentive to go for the more difficult Just Frame timing. Now, there is a nerf, like, the medium is doing less damage is a nerf too, but her level 3 specifically used to start up really fast, like really fast. So it still starts up fast, but now it hits on frame 9. Before it hit on frame 5, meaning it could punish things like literally no other character in the game could touch. So the Blessing and Nagakaboros a little bit lessened. Still looks cool, still getting level 3 in the game, but maybe not punishing unpunishable moves otherwise. So basically, rethink some of your combos, use some more charge heavies, some more charge S2s, maybe a little bit less mediums. We'll figure it out in time. Illaoi is not that different in the end, and she rewards skill-based play just a bit more now that the Just Frames are a bit more rewarded. Now, moving on to Jinx. Jinx got some interesting buffs, not the least of which to her little helper friends, Flame Chompers and our monkey pal. So for Flame Chompers, so she can either just toss it or she can do like the charged held version, right? So the charged held version now comes out 8 frames faster than it did before. So basically it's just that much easier to toss it out full screen and see what happens. Also for Flame Chompers, the part where Flame Chompers like connects the enemy no longer causes damage scaling. Like the part where it explodes still does, but basically that means if it connects in any way, you're just going to do more overall damage from like whatever combo you're going to get. That's great. Also, regular Chomper, so not the held version. It has the same damage scaling change, just so you know. So this starts up and recovers 2 frames faster both. So everything about it, it's just easier to put it on screen, just like the charged version. So you're incentivized to do this more often. And down S1, that's our little monkey pal, so he's changed as well. So the recovery of tossing this out is decreased by 3 frames. So it is now 47 frames overall, meaning, well, you just recover that much quicker, so you can toss monkey, shoot bullets, shoot rocket, whatever you want to do. So everything about Flame Chompers and your monkey buddy, it's just faster, better to do it, so you want to do it more often. Now, how about buffing moves that just straight up suck? So back S1, back S1's not a good move, and maybe after these changes, it might be worth your while. So they kind of just change how it works to begin with. So if it catches you even on the ground, it will launch you up in the air. It now also has just more hit stun overall. Also, each singular bullet does not cause damage scaling. That was kind of the problem in that if it actually connected, it'd just chew your combo damage to nothing, right? So the scaling has been much more relaxed on it. So if you actually connect with this, like you theoretically are not going to lose all your damage out of the gate. So that's useful, like give a reason to use it. Also, the bullets that do cause scaling do more damage. So again, your overall damage is just going up. Also, you're gaining more meter while doing it. So just kind of everything about it is improved. Also, hey, let's take improvements. Heavy. So her stand heavy is like one of her more dominant buttons just because it has gigantic range, right? But it was -11 on block. Now it's -9. So still negative, but some characters in more edge case situations could punish it. And well, that's no good. So now, as long as you space it correctly, it shouldn't be punishable. Also, hitboxes have been changed a bit just for combo consistency. So yeah, that's good. There's a nerf. It's a fair nerf. So her level 3 did way too much chip damage. So basically the chip damage is toned down. Like, you still don't want to block it. You know, it still does reasonable chip damage, but it does like almost half as much as it used to. Other little buff, stand medium, just literally does more damage. Does 60 now, used to do 55. Her down medium, the part that's a 2-hit move here, right? So the first hit of it now does 10 more damage than it used to. Does 40, used to do 30. Although on the flip, jump medium, just because it's such an overwhelming button, now does 5 less damage. But still, with stand medium and crouch medium both doing more damage, maybe some more combo routing can be figured out. So overall, Jinx, like, the things she's, like, you know, wanting to do, like tossing out traps, just filling the screen with trash, that part's better. Back S1 hopefully being usable now. That'd be really cool. So we'll see how that lines out. So not gigantic. It's not like a Braum level buff or nothing, but it's interesting. How about Teemo? So Teemo's been a terror, and he's been pretty heavily nerfed, and there's still more nerfs to come. So, but there's some... There's buffs to, like, you know, make you not feel as bad about it. So we got light and light. So basically the recovery on those is a little bit better. Specifically, the recovery on both these, the double and triple version, is 3 frames better, which at bare minimum will make them slightly better on block. And it's technically a buff. Now let's get to the nerfs. So stand medium has had its block stun reduced by 4 frames. So it's 22 frames, now it's 18 frames, which means it is much more negative on block. It is now -10 on block. So if you're just going to like try to end a string with that, maybe don't, because you might get blown up for it. So same here with heavy. So the recovery in general of heavy has been increased by 5 frames. So it used to be -4 on block. It is now -9 on block, which is very punishable for a good chunk of the cast. So basically between stand M and heavy, watch out how you end your strings, because you might start getting blown up. Now, how about Teemo's infamous S1 Super, where he just shoots all sorts of crazy darts? Well, one big nerf is he literally shoots less darts now. So he used to shoot out 9 darts, now he shoots out 8. So less stuff on the screen, less damage, everything you can call it, right? Just less. That said, okay, to be fair, each dart actually does slightly more damage. So maybe not less damage overall, depending on the amount that hits. But basically, I don't know, by their own notes, they said this move's too annoying. So they just want it to last not as long, so he shoots a singular less dart out. Also, retreat, where he teleports into the bush if he has the bush set up here. So it's still invulnerable, but it becomes invulnerable later on. So it starts invulnerable frame 4 instead of frame 2, meaning basically if he's doing it to run away, you're just a little bit more likely to hit him out of it. You don't need a frame perfect meaty to be able to stop him from running away with the teleport. Also, just like his S1 Super, so his super assist when he's dead, where he just drops mushrooms all over the map, which is very strong. So it will remain very strong, although he's going to disappear just a little bit earlier. Specifically on the math, it was 220 frames total duration. It is now 187 frames total duration, meaning he throws a couple less mushrooms. So it still basically eats up the screen, but it doesn't eat up even like further beyond the screen, basically. How about more nerfs? We got those. So brush fire, if it doesn't make contact with the enemy, it basically just does not last as long. So the thing with that is it was just a big active trap on the screen. So now you kind of got to use it in combos, otherwise it's going to go away pretty quick. Specifically, it used to be 4 seconds duration, now it's only 2 second duration. All the badge stuff too is getting nerfed. You know, Teemo's got to do various moves to build his badges, right? So the requirements of those are going up across the board. So before he needed, say for slingshot, he needed 5 slingshots to get the badge in. Now he needs 6. Dart badge. Before you could get that in 12 hits. Now it's going to be 15 hits. And mushroom, you had to get 10 of them in, right? Now you gotta get 12. Now keep in mind, some mushrooms cost extra, like the super mushroom takes 2. So, but whatever. Now you need to hit more mushrooms. Now keep in mind, the badges persist between rounds and all that, right? So it's still not impossible to build them, but the requirements are just going up across the board. So yeah, versus Ekko and Ahri, and we'll talk about Yasuo, who I feel sort of got slapped on the wrist. Teemo, who already got pretty heavily nerfed before this. I feel this is another pretty heavy nerf, all said and told. Now, I don't think he's going to be useless or nothing, right? But this is a top tier that's definitely probably going to drop out of top tier. These nerfs kind of hurt. So now on to Vi, our nominal protagonist, I guess. So she's got some interesting changes. So one, her command dash, right, has a lot of interesting options. One of them is just, the light. And if you charge it, you can, cause a spin out, cool electric effect. You can use your other footwork stuff to combo after the fact if you get the charge version. So the change here is specifically this. So if you hit with the counter hit with just the uncharged version, it gets the same property as the charged version. Obviously without the cool electric effect, right, from telling you have to charge. But otherwise, if it just hits as a counter hit, it'll cause the same spin out. And then you can get all the same follow-ups after the fact, which makes it very useful. So there's a pretty substantial reward now just to charge in and fish and see if you get the counter hit. One of the benefits of the counter hit change is since it has the same properties as the full charge, that means you don't necessarily have to have the electric timing for the second hit, right? You can just do the full charge version and it'll automatically hit, so you can just go for the whole shebang. So basically, if you suck at the specific manual timing needed for that, it's a straight buff to it. More buffs, not big buffs, but charge S1. Now it has slightly more damage, just 5 more damage than it did before. Now the real interesting change is, so offer command dash, charge heavy, just the big old dunk, right? So this now, on hit or on block, can be canceled into the various S1 special moves. So if you block the big dunk now, she can just keep going into basically anything else, just like her various other chains. So now it just makes her offense a lot more interesting. Like whatever you want to cancel into, it is now an option. Even stuff that doesn't necessarily make sense, but that's your call. And yes, this does mean there is potentially new combo routing you can do thanks to this change. So play around with it. She potentially has all new routes because of this, so that's cool. More buffs. Her throw off the command dash. So the way it's worded now basically is your assist can now hit people just earlier on. Mid-air S2 and down S2 just both do more damage. It's 5 more damage, but more damage is more damage. Also, if the opponent happens to air block, you're now much more advantageous than you were before. As in, you have any advantage to begin with. Depending on how they landed, they could be way more advantageous than you were, depending on your recovery. Also, her super assist has been pretty wildly changed up in a couple ways. So, for one, and it's a pretty big one, the assist will now just destroy all their projectiles. So, it'll help you win the fireball war, as it were. Also, it will off the ground opponents now and launch them, and you can get whatever you want after the fact. So it's more useful in neutral, it's more useful in combos. So there is some nerfs here. So say Vi when she does knuckle down. So, the big buff move we talked about earlier. So now she's lower to the ground when she does it, just because you can, theoretically just kind of keep on looping this stuff, right? So you got to be somewhere near the ground for the enemy to actually interact with you. So if they call you out, they can actually bop you, which is perfectly fair. And denting blows, the big punch. So this is really good in a million ways, right? So perhaps a little too good. So it causes more damage scaling now when used in combos, which once again, probably fair. But yeah, overall, definitely buffs the Vi and just interesting overall. I think people will be pretty happy with it. Okay, now moving on to Warwick. This is one where I'm going to highlight. Please check the patch notes in the video description. Obviously, we're going to talk about it, but so many little changes are all about just combo consistency for him, as Warwick has had struggles with just making combos easy to do, right? It's been getting better, and it's getting better yet, but a lot of the little changes have to do with that, and I don't want to go over every particular with that. So if you want to know every particular, check the patch notes. But let's hit the big notes for Warwick. So let's talk one of the bigger changes out of the gate. So Warwick is very much a 50-50 monkey, right? He's got very long range overheads, very long range lows, and hope you guess right, basically, right? So some of these are changing a little bit. So one, the low, down forward heavy, the ankle swipe, right? So it's a knockdown low. So one thing is it has ever so slightly more range than it did before. So that's, well, for a very long range, very fast low, that's pretty okay. We'll take what we can get. Also, it's better on block. It used to be -11 on block. It is now -8 on block. Now, you can see here it says -7. This move does have multiple active frames. So depending on which frame you hit on is the frame you'll be negative on, right? But basically, it's more safe on block. However, S1, the overhead, is now more negative on block. So it used to be -6, it is now -8. So the idea here is this. If you successfully coin flip on the 50-50 machine here, you block the overhead, you block the low, whatever, right? The punishes are now effectively unified. He's always going to be -8. You don't need to learn a different punish for which one you blocked accordingly. As long as you survive the coin flip engine, you now just hit your appropriate button, get the punish. So that's sort of the idea. Especially for some of the members of the cast, like punishing this with that -6, especially depending on the distance, was effectively nigh on impossible, right? So now it should be more reasonable. So basically, tiny nerf to the overhead and decent buff to the low. Now, one of the more interesting buffs is to his wall cling. So wall cling medium primal rend is now substantially more advantage on block. So if you can get it here, depending on where it hits, you know, the active frames, all that. But basically, it's always going to be advantage. The block stun has been increased by 6 frames. So right now we're +5. Before I would have been negative on block there, right? So now the idea is basically, if you can get the wall cling off and you get the medium, you're always going to be +2 to a degree, depending on when and where the active frames hit and where you are to the ground. If you're already going to be plus, you're just going to be more plus. But basically, you're always going to be plus on block now. Basically, it gives you a reason to do it over, say, the command leap medium. Also, it helps, like many other things, for his combo consistency. The hitbox has also been buffed. More buffs? How about this? So S1, the overhead, we already talked about that, right? So obviously, one of the things about Warwick is the bloodlust mechanic where you can get all gnarly, right? So one of the things about it is if you hold it, you run. And he now runs substantially faster while in bloodlust. He runs 30% faster. And just everything about, like you see here, the range is substantially better as well, right? So everything about it while he's in bloodlust is just a good deal better. Also, Wrath of the Beast, forward and S1, that is your headbutt charge, basically, right? So it now goes about 15% further as of according to the patch. This is another move with multiple active frames. So if you can hit it just kind of at the end of the active frames, basically make it safe, you can use it from further away. So that's a buff. Not the least of which is the other buff for the move is it pushes the opponent further back on block. So if you can basically hit it at the absolute edge of the move, if you get the hit, great. If you don't, ideally, hopefully, they'll be pushed back far enough that they can't get a punish on you. Now S2, it says here it pushes back the opponent less on block. It's still very negative, but the idea is here it shouldn't be whiffing unless they're actively doing retreating guard. Now, how about even more buff? So if you are in Bloodlust and you forward S2, so this is Bloodlust only, Feral Feast, this move is now -5 on block. So it's negative, it's not ideal, but it used to be -8, which was definitely a guaranteed punish everywhere. So it now matches the non-Bloodlust version, which is also -5. Spinning Slicer, so jump S2 and the follow-up here. So this guy now has better landing recovery. So basically the idea is you can just kind of do it and then call your assist, and since you recover faster, you'll have better frame advantage, especially with the assist call, and then just do your usual pressure thing. So specifically, it recovers 4 frames faster than it did before. How about more things that are faster and better? His S2 super now starts up 2 frames faster. And just keeping the theme of buff and stuff, his ultimate is level 3, now is faster. So it starts up 4 frames faster than it did before. It is now a 12 frame startup versus a 16 frame startup, meaning effectively, by their own wording here, there was times where they could like basically recover in time if you tried to use it as a reaction check and then block. And now, since it's 4 frames faster, that should no longer be the case. And again, there's a mountain of text for Warwick about all of his various moves, normal specials that are all about just combo consistency. So ideally, hopefully, his combo should be a lot more consistent. But yeah, so he's basically working more as intended, which is great, and definitely just got a good pile of buffs. Warwick was a character that was not bad, so he's only doing even better yet now. And finally, we're on the Yasuo. So many would argue, in terms of being, you know, the top tier terror, he's like at the peak of the mountain, right? It's either him or Ekko. And he definitely got what I can only justify as a slap on the wrist. Teemo got the hammer. Yasuo ain't paying no real price. But let's talk about it. Let's talk his buffs first, because naturally he's got to get buffed. So it's not many, but Stand M and Crouch Heavy both have better hitboxes. So Stand M, it's basically just for consistency and hitting crouching opponents, which is perfectly fair. And Crouch Heavy is just a better hitbox all around. Other buff, Forward S1. This is the regular version, not the held version. If it hits a grounded foe, it has more hit stun, basically. It has 28 frames. The whole thing is you would never let it rock by itself nominally, other than the fact that it is a Rekka series, and you can heavily delay the various Rekka hits. So I guess the idea is you can kind of just go for a throw or something. I don't know. So the big nerfs, big in quotes. So Stand M and Crouch M now have more recovery. So the idea is here. Stand M has 6 more frames of recovery, and Crouch M has 5 more frames of recovery. Now, the idea is not for these to be like punishable on block, because you're never ending the string on these. The idea is if these happen to whiff, then they'll make them more whiff punishable, which, sure, but Yasuo is not a character in the habit of whiffing moves either. You get what I'm saying, right? So, like, it is a weakness. You know, better for him to get this nerf than not, I guess. But does it actually matter in any real way? Time will tell. Regardless, so if he does whiff a medium, it will be that much easier to whiff punish him. So it is something. Another change is a nerf to the hitbox of Stand 1, specifically when close up. So the idea is it's anti-airing too much. And I say that as I literally anti-air and do it again. But there we go. Thank God. I'm not retaking that, by the way. That's one take, rooflemonger. That's how we're doing it here. But the wording is that it would, S1, occasionally catch champions who successfully jumped in on Yasuo. This should occur much less often. So, hopefully, anyways, I still managed to anti-air with it, though. Now, one change is for his air, S1, S1, S2, like the usual combo ender thing, right? So, the opponent falls faster, and specifically due to the change, Yasuo can no longer get his S1 super on an opponent afterwards. Now, you can still get the S2 super, right? Like, and yeah, follow up if you have the meter for it. So, like, that part's not different, but the more desirable S1 super can't get that. And that's basically the main stuff besides just, like, quality of life stuff and some bug fixes, which all characters have all sorts of bug fixes. It's a very big patch. So overall, a very interesting patch. Again, if you want to get into the real nitty gritty, like a lot of the bug fixes or quality of life stuff that are very small, I didn't go over because this is already a very long video as it is. But that's kind of the main bits of it. Obviously, some characters either won out or lost more than others. Like, I think it's very fair to say Braum is the biggest winner. Is he top tier? No, he's not top tier, but he definitely got a lot, right? Versus old Teemo definitely got hammer taken to his ankles. We'll see where he winds up. And other people like Darius, Warwick, great quality of life, good just overall buffs. Ahri, Yasuo, like probably could have got more nerfed than they did. And in the future, obviously, there's going to be more changes. But the game's going overall in a great direction. This is their biggest patch to date by a large amount. And overall, I think it's a very good patch for the game, and I'm really just interested to see what the future has to hold. That said, though, we're at the end. If you made it this far, please leave a like. And, well, I guess I'll see you next time around. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some 2XKO.